going to present to you some basic instructions for the beginner who is getting on CW. Now, some people who are getting on CW are not beginners because of the no-code license. Some people are just getting started even if they've been a ham for a number of years. These are some of the things I've learned in my 52 years on the air. Some of them I will thank my Elmer, K1OIK Dan Carter, who is no longer a ham, but who lives in New York City, when I recently found out that he's still alive. He taught me some of those things. So, without further ado, this is a Elecraft KX3. I have the power turned down to 0, so I won't be interfering with anybody. Though with 12 watts, I generally don't interfere with too many people. I do want to take a moment to point out this is a Simpson 260 meter, has nothing to do with CW, but it is an excellent meter for the beginner to have. I don't trust digital meters because they have too many parts in them and things can go wrong. I like a meter that doesn't have anything active in it working, so that when I use it, I can trust the meter reading. And Simpson is a very good meter. Usually you can throw them around quite a bit. They cost quite a bit of money. I think they're probably in the $200 to $300 range. But if you have it, that's a great meter to have. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about as far as CW is concerned, don't run your letters together. Make them individual. Like, that's fine, but not, that's terrible. So don't run the letters together. Make them individual, like you're taking little bites of a very fine delicacy. If your call ends in a K like mine, be very careful when you send your call. Don't send it like this. Notice the slight separation between the I and the K. That's going to get someone to think that your call is K1OI, because K is an invitation to transmit. And while we're speaking about K, many hams I hear on the air use the term KN. Well, KN means they don't want any breakers. But in 52 years on the air sending CW, in all the contacts I've made, I've never heard anyone break in. So don't waste your time sending an N. CW communication is about efficiency, both in power and getting out, and communication. CW does not require a modulator or anything fancy. So if your boat is sinking, don't take your computer, your PSK, all that stuff. Just take a key and anything that can generate a carrier. When you're sending on the air, repeat numbers. For example, in an age. My age happens to be 66. Then a small break. So I repeat my age in numbers, and I will repeat, certainly will repeat the number of years I've been a ham, and also RST is also repeated. And try and give honest signal reports. You know, I've noticed with this rig, and with an FT817 I had, I never seemed to get anything less than a 559. Yet I know people were struggling trying to copy me, so give an honest signal report. Efficiency in communication in CW. Use the minimum amount of words to get your point across. So you don't need to say the rig here is. We all know the rig is at where you are. You don't need to say the weather here is. Just say the weather. And speaking of the weather, the other day somebody sent me a indication of the weather that the temperature was 70 degrees F. Well, I kind of think it had to have been 70 degrees Fahrenheit, because if it was 70 degrees Celsius, as hot as the summer of 2012 has been, I don't think any place in the U.S. or any place in the world was 70 degrees Celsius. If you're on the air and you've got a computer nearby and you look up someone on QRZ and their name, let's say, happens to be Archibald, don't go back to him and say, okay, hi Archibald, before he's even given you his name. That may not be the name he goes by. My name, if you look up on QRZ, is not the name I go by. So I know when someone calls me Burton, they've been really cool and looked me up on QRZ and tried to be one step ahead of me. Let the guy give his name. I hate bugs. They're not the kind that are flying around here. And in fact, sometimes there are big airplanes that fly around here. The bugs I'm talking about are like the vibroflex bug. I can't operate them, and trying to copy them can be very difficult for someone like me who's not that good at CW. So for example, if I'm trying to copy CW, I like the dot and dit ratio to be 3:1. With a bug, those dits are sometimes very, very short, and it makes it difficult for me to copy. Maybe you're different. When you're working somebody and they come back to you, or you answer a CQ, you've got to assume that if they called the CQ at 20 words a minute, you're going to have to copy them at 20 words a minute. Also, if someone else is calling a CQ at 10 words a minute, don't come back to them at 20 words a minute. They're not going to be able to copy you, and they're going to be too embarrassed to say anything else. One of my favorite Q signals is QRS, because I need it a lot. You know, you'd figure after 52 years on the air and working as much CW as I do, I'd be able to get above 20 words a minute, but I can't. If you're running QRP, you even have to keep it more simple and less and more efficient than if you're running a little bit more power. If you call CQ, when someone answers you and they go back to you and it comes back to you, you have the obligation to give your name, their signal report, and your location. Don't send it back to the other person to have him do it first. That's pretty much the etiquette in ham radio. Now, some of the abbreviations that are used on CW. First of all, don't use the abbreviation BK when you're saying back to you. Because BK also can mean that it's a break and they're turning it right over to you. So if you're going to say back to you, spell out the back. Some of the abbreviations: TNX for thanks, UR for your, U for your YOU, QRS, my favorite, WX obviously for weather, and a type of weather, cloudy, CLDY. I hope you don't ever say to anybody that it's partially overcast, because by definition overcast means the whole sky. FB stands for fine business, a term pretty much relegated to ham radio. Hi, hi, not on voice, on CW. Usually given twice indicates laughter. It's a little shorter than HA, ha ha, so that's why it's used. But when you go to voice, if it's something's funny, I would suggest you laugh. People will call CQ when they're in a contest. They won't call CQ contest. They'll call this CQ test, and it's not a test per se. It's CQ contest. Now, you will never hear me call CQ test because I don't do contests, but for those of you that like to do contests, be my guest. Speaking of contests, there are two CW groups that are fairly popular, and they run very simple contests that are not all that competitive, but are good for the beginner. SKCC, that's free. You can apply for them online and get a number. And there are a number of these contests. There's a sprint contest that you can get in where a name, a location, and a signal report, and generally an honest signal report, is given. The other group is FIST, and they charge to join. So either SKCC or FIST will be those two groups that you can join and participate in their CW contests that are not all that difficult.